Amara came home late from her shift at the diner. Her feet hurt, and all she could think about was lying down for a few minutes before starting her homework. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She slipped off her shoes and headed toward the kitchen, but before she could reach it, she heard his voice. Amara, living room, now. It was Thomas, her stepfather. His voice had that sharp, clipped tone she knew too well. She walked into the living room slowly, confused. He was sitting on the couch in a suit, his glasses low on his nose, a thick folder on the coffee table in front of him. He didn't look up. I have something for you, he said, flipping open the folder. An agreement. She sat down across from him, feeling uneasy. What kind of agreement? He pushed the papers toward her. Either you pay $70,000 to stay in this house, or you have 30 days to leave. Amara stared at him, thinking she must have heard wrong. What? This house is mine now, he said calmly. Your mother didn't leave a valid will. Her handwritten note means nothing in court. So, as the legal next of kin, I own this house. If you want to stay here, you'll need to buy your part. She felt like the air had been knocked out of her, but this house was hers. She wanted me to have it. She didn't do the paperwork, he said with a shrug. Intentions don't matter. Lord does. Amara picked up the papers with shaking hands. It was all real. His signature, her name printed neatly at the top, a demand, dressed up as a contract. This isn't right, she said, her voice small. She told me. Doesn't matter what she told you, he cut in. You've got a month. Amara stood up, her legs weak, her eyes burned, but she wouldn't cry in front of him. Not now, not ever again. She looked around the room, the same room where she used to sit with her mother and watch movies, where they decorated the Christmas tree, where her mum had laughed, hugged her, held her. Now it felt cold, empty. She looked at Thomas one last time, the man who once promised to take care of both of them. His eyes were hard, unmoved. Her voice barely came out. Then I guess I have no home, and she turned and walked away. Amara was 13 when her mother met Thomas. He was friendly back then, always smiling, bringing flowers, calling her kiddo. He made her mum laugh again after years of struggle. At first, Amara was happy for them. It felt like maybe things were finally turning around. When they got married, things stayed good for a while. Thomas took them out to dinner, helped Amara with homework, even built her a bookshelf for her birthday. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a family. But everything changed after her mother got sick. The cancer came fast and hard. Her mother started losing weight, her hair, her energy. Amara took care of her the best she could, but she was still a teenager. Thomas slowly pulled away. He stopped sitting with her mom during treatments. He stopped talking to Amara, unless it was to tell her what she was doing wrong. He became cold, strict, and distant. By the time her mother passed away 2 years ago, Thomas had already become someone else. He didn't cry at the funeral. He didn't even hug Amara. After that, he started treating her like a guest in her own home. No warmth, no kindness, just rules and rent. Now, Amara is 21. She's studying to become a nurse. Between classes and long hours at the diner, she barely has time to breathe. She's tired all the time, both in her body and in her heart. The house she once loved now feels like a cage. Thomas is careful outside. He smiles at neighbors, waves at mailmen, and talks politely to everyone. People think he's a good man, a strong man, who took in his sick wife and her daughter. But behind closed doors, he's cold and strict. He talks to Amara like she's a burden. He makes her feel like she doesn't belong. Sometimes he even locks the pantry or shuts off the hot water. When Amara brings it up, he says, "You want to live here for free, you play by my rules." Her only real support is her cousin Jaden. He's a year older than her, and they've been close since they were kids. He knows everything, how Thomas acts, how hard life has been since her mom passed. "You need to get out of there," Jaden told her one night as they sat on a bench outside her. "That man will break you, Amara." She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. He was right. The problem was, she had nowhere to go. She couldn't afford her own place. Her school barely gave her enough financial aid, and what she made from her job covered only the basics. She thought about the will, the handwritten letter her mother left behind, saying the house should be Amara's. But it wasn't enough, not legally, and Thomas knew that. He held all the power. Amara felt stuck. She was living in the house where all her best memories lived, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like she was holding onto something that kept slipping away. She had dreams, finishing school, helping people, building a better life. But right now, all she could do was survive. Amara couldn't sleep after Thomas gave her the agreement. Her thoughts kept spinning, her chest heavy with fear. She didn't know much about legal stuff, but she knew her mother wanted her to have the house. That had to mean something, right? The next morning, after class, she went to the campus library and began searching online about property laws and handwritten wills. The more she read, the worse she felt. A will that isn't registered or written with a lawyer can be hard to prove in court. It needs witnesses, dates, proper wording. Her mother's note had none of that. Still, Amara didn't want to give up. She remembered the name of the lawyer her mum once talked about, Mr. Layton. She found his office downtown and asked to see him. He was older, with kind eyes, but his words made her heart sink. Yes, your mother came to me once. She brought the handwritten will. I told her it wouldn't hold up unless we made it official, but she said she didn't trust anyone. She thought keeping it hidden would keep it safe. So there's nothing I can do? Amara asked, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, he said softly. Without a registered will or witnesses, it's hard to fight. When Amara got home that evening, there was an envelope taped to her bedroom door. Her stomach turned as she opened it. Inside was a formal letter. Thomas had hired a lawyer. It was an eviction notice. She had 30 days to leave. Her hands shook, her vision blurred with tears. But something inside her refused to back down. She spent the next few nights going through her mum's things, opening old boxes in the attic, reading letters, photos, anything. On the third night, inside a small wooden box wrapped in a scarf, she found it. The original handwritten will. It was yellowed and slightly wrinkled, but her mum's handwriting was clear. If anything happens to me, I want Amara to have the house. This is her home. At the bottom was her signature and the date. Amara held it close to her chest, crying quietly. It wasn't legal maybe, but it was real. Her mom had meant it. She knew that. That night, she went downstairs and placed the letter on the kitchen table in front of Thomas. He looked up from his laptop. What's this? My mum's will, she said. Her real one. She wanted me to have the house. He read it without emotion, then pushed it back toward her. That piece of paper won't save you, he said flatly. It's worthless. Amara clenched her fists. It's not worthless to me. He didn't even reply. He just stood up and walked out of the room like it meant nothing. The next day, Amara went to work like usual. Her shift dragged on, her body aching. All she wanted was to go home and rest. But when she got back to the house that night, something was wrong. Her key didn't work. She tried again and again, but the lock had been changed. Her heart dropped. She knocked on the door, then pounded. No answer. Her phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. You no longer live here. Find somewhere else to sleep tonight. Amara stared at the screen, standing on the porch in the dark, cold night. She was locked out of her own life. Amara sat on the edge of Jaden's couch, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't slept much. The apartment was small, just one bedroom, a cramped living room, and a kitchen that always smelled like burnt toast. But Jaden had made space for her, without question. Still, she felt like a burden. Her clothes were in plastic bags, and her books were piled beside the couch. Every morning, she folded her blanket before school, trying not to cry. I'm sorry, she whispered one night. Jaden looked up from his laptop. Stop apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong. He did, but Amara couldn't stop feeling ashamed. She was 21, broke, homeless, and losing control of her life. Thomas had taken everything, and now he acted like she never belonged in that house to begin with. Still, she wasn't ready to give up. With Jaden's help, she bought a small voice recorder. She started calling Thomas, recording every call, every voicemail. She even recorded him when she saw him outside the house and tried talking to him. Sometimes he'd speak with a fake, calm voice, pretending to be patient. Other times he snapped. He once told her, "You're a nobody. You're lucky I let you live there as long as I did." She saved every word, but the stress took its toll. At school, Amara struggled to focus. She missed classes. She showed up late. Her grades dropped. One of her professors pulled her aside and said she was close to losing her scholarship. Amara nodded and promised she'd fix it, but inside, she was scared she couldn't. At night, she had flashbacks of her mum. Quiet mornings in the kitchen, music playing while they made pancakes. Her mum brushing her hair and whispering, "You're stronger than you think." Those moments felt so far away now, like they belonged to someone else. One afternoon, Jaden came home with a flyer. "I talked to someone at work," he said. There's a legal aid group downtown. They help people who can't afford lawyers. We should go. Amara stared at the paper. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small spark of hope. They went together the next day. The office was small, but full of energy. A young woman named Mel listened to Amara's story and took notes carefully. You've already done a lot, Mel said. The will may not be strong enough on its own, but the recordings help. We'll build something. A week later, Thomas sent Amara a new blow. He filed a restraining order. The paper said she had been harassing and stalking him. She was ordered to stay away from the house and from him. Amara stared at it in shock. He's trying to erase me, she said quietly. They had to go to court. In the hearing, Thomas wore his nicest suit and looked calm, even sad. He told the judge Amara had been acting out, showing up at his job, yelling outside the house. He claimed she was emotionally unstable and possibly dangerous. People in the courtroom glanced at her with suspicion. Amara sat frozen, hands shaking in her lap. Her chest felt tight. Her whole body wanted to disappear. When it was her turn to speak, she opened her mouth, but no words came. Tears welled up. She was drowning. Then her phone buzzed. Jaden showed it to her, a new voicemail. He pressed play. It was her mother's voice. If anything happens to me, promise Amara gets the house. She's all I have. That's her home. Please, don't let anyone take it from her. The courtroom went still. The voicemail had come from her mum's old friend, Miss Carla. They hadn't spoken in a long time, but she'd kept that message saved for years. Amara wiped her eyes and stood up. That house is mine, she said, voice quiet but steady, and I'm not going to let him take what's left of my mother from me. Amara sat across from Mel, her legal aid lawyer, as they listened to the voicemail again. Her mother's voice filled the quiet room. It was gentle and full of love, but also firm. Mel looked up. This could change everything. Within a few days, Mel filed a petition with the court to pause the eviction and reopen the case. The voicemail was submitted as new evidence, along with the handwritten will and all of Amara's recordings. It wasn't a full win yet, but the court agreed to review everything. Amara felt like she could breathe again, even if just a little. As Mel and her team began digging deeper into Thomas's actions, they found something shocking. One of Jaden's friends mentioned seeing their old house listed online for rent. Amara didn't believe it at first, but when they checked, there it was. Her childhood home, listed on Airbnb under a fake name. Thomas had been secretly renting out the basement suite for months, even while he was trying to kick her out. He had made thousands of dollars, none of which he ever mentioned. That wasn't all. When Mel pulled more records, they found paperwork showing Thomas had used Amara's mother's death certificate to apply for a new mortgage. He tried to refinance the house in his name, claiming to be the only legal owner. Amara felt sick. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted to erase everything my mom left behind. Finally, the court date arrived. Amara sat in the courtroom, her hands cold, heart pounding. Thomas walked in like he always did, calm, confident, and dressed in a sharp suit. He nodded at the judge, smiled at the clerk. He looked like a man who had nothing to hide. Then the hearing began. Mel presented the voicemail. The judge listened carefully. Next came the handwritten will, the call recordings, the photos of the Airbnb listing, and finally, the refinancing document. Thomas tried to defend himself. He said the house was falling apart, that he needed money to fix it. He claimed Amara was unstable and had never been meant to inherit the property. But then Amara stood up. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom and took the stand. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. That house is the last thing I have of my mother, she said. He doesn't care about the house. He just wants to erase me. He's been lying to this court, to everyone. But I know what my mum wanted. I know what's right. The room was silent. Even Thomas didn't speak. After a long pause, the judge leaned forward. While the will is not registered, the voicemail and other evidence clearly show intent. This court finds that the late Miss Sinclair wanted her daughter to have the property. All legal actions by Mr. Howard against Miss Sinclair are hereby frozen, and no changes to the ownership of the home may proceed without a formal civil review. Amara's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. The judge's words echoed in Amara's mind as she walked out of the courtroom. For the first time in months, the air felt light. She had won the right to fight for the house, but it wasn't over yet. A civil case was still needed to make everything final. That meant more time, more money, and more waiting. Amara didn't have the money. She was still in school, still working part-time, and still sleeping on Jaden's couch. But she wasn't the same girl who had walked home one day to find her locks changed. She was stronger now. With Jaden's help, Amara wrote out her story and shared it online. She explained everything, how her stepdad had kicked her out, how she found the will, and how she fought back in court. At the end of the post, she added a link to a GoFundMe page. She only hoped a few people might help, but the story spread fast. People started sharing it, reposting it, commenting. Some called her brave. Others shared their own stories about inheritance fights, greedy relatives, or being pushed out of their homes. Within a week, Amara's GoFundMe had raised thousands of dollars. Local news picked it up. A reporter even called her the girl who stood up for her mother's last wish. It felt strange to be noticed, but also good. For the first time, Amara didn't feel invisible. As the money came in, Mel and her team pushed forward with the civil suit. Thomas didn't fight as hard this time. After the court had frozen his claims and the public began turning on him, he backed away. The Airbnb listing disappeared. His face, once seen as polite and respectful, was now tied to words like greedy and dishonest. A few months later, the final papers were signed. The house officially belonged to Amara. Jaden offered to help her move in, but Amara shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I'm not going back there to live." He looked surprised. "After everything you did to get it back?" She smiled. "I didn't fight for it just for me. I fought because no one should feel that powerless." With her remaining GoFundMe money and some help from a few donors, Amara started fixing up the house. She painted the walls, repaired broken windows, and cleaned every room. She added new furniture and soft lights. She hung a photo of her mom in the hallway. Then she put a sign outside, "Hope House, a safe space for young women." She turned the home that once held her pain into something beautiful, a place where other girls like her, lost, scared, or pushed out, could find rest, safety, and a second chance. Amara no longer needed to live there to feel her mother's presence. The house had become something greater than a memory. It had become a purpose. Amara stood quietly in the living room. The walls were freshly painted, warm and soft in color. The air smelled clean, like new beginnings. It was empty now, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. She walked over to the fireplace and gently placed a small photo on the mantel. It was her mom, smiling in the garden, sunlight in her hair. It had always been her favorite picture. Amara looked at it for a long time, her eyes filling with tears, not from pain, but from love. "So we did it," she whispered. "I kept my promise." She stood a little taller now, stronger, braver. In her heart, she knew something had changed. This wasn't just the end of a long fight. It was the start of a new life, one she had chosen, one she had built with her own hands. As she walked to the front door, her fingers brushed the light switch one last time. The lights clicked off behind her. She stepped outside and turned back for a moment. Then she slowly closed the door and locked it. Not out of fear, but because she was in control now. "He thought taking the house would break me," she thought, "but losing it showed me who I really was." And with that, Amara walked forward, ready for whatever came next. Thank you so much for reading till the end. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, leave a comment,